Year 8, and welcome to our help video on The Listeners by Walter de Mare. This video is designed to help you with answering the questions and getting ready to write your 200 words, which is this week's Unseen Poetry task. So, I'm not going to read the poem to you. I'm sure you're perfectly capable of doing that in your own time. But the question that we're trying to answer is, how does the poet create a frightening atmosphere? And then the key bit of information that we are provided with, which, along with your questions, is this piece here. This extract describes the moment a traveller calls at a house in a wood. So, as usual, this part of your prompt slide gives you some crucial information which will help you work out what the poem is about. So I've actually printed out the poem separately on a separate piece of paper because I think that it's just a little bit easier for you to see my annotations, and we can have it as a bigger size like this. So the first question we have is, how does line 1 to 2 create an eerie atmosphere? Well, eerie means kind of scary or frightening, doesn't it? A little bit spooky. So the opening of the poem is there anybody there? Said the traveller, knocking on the moonlit door. So we have to have a think about what sort of things are going on in this line which make us feel a little bit frightened, or that something a little bit unusual is happening. So I think it's quite interesting that the character in the poem, the main character, he's referred to as the traveller. So we don't get to learn very much about him. So even the fact that his identity is withheld, that creates a little bit of an eerie atmosphere. And the fact that it's capitalised as well, sort of, who is he? The capital letter here sort of suggests some kind of importance to him, but we never get to know exactly who he is. And we have, and then we have the detail about the moonlight. Okay, and I think that that's important. So he starts with a question, and we also get the moonlit setting. So the setting actually creates quite a kind of gothic atmosphere. Just because we know it's set at night, it seems a little bit more eerie. And the fact as well that this question, is there anybody there, which he repeats again here on line 8, and we're going to come to that in a minute. The question goes unanswered, and I think that kind of creates an atmosphere as well. He obviously feels that there is somebody there, and that they're listening. So hopefully that gives you enough information to come up with some thoughts of your own around question 1. So then we're thinking about line 8. What is the effect of the direct speech again in line 8? And we just mentioned that a little bit earlier, didn't we? So there's a reasonable amount of direct speech in the poem. It's done here and here. And then we get another piece of direct speech quite a lot later on in the poem. So this poetic technique here is repetition. And the fact that he repeats the question, it kind of reinforces this idea that he obviously thinks that there is someone there. It reinforces this idea that he senses that there is something else there listening. And I think that kind of helps. So it kind of creates a sort of sense of anticipation and expectation for us. Question 3 is, what words in the poem relate to silence and emptiness? Well, I think there's quite a few. Obviously, we've got silence, and I like the way that he uses the horse. The poet uses the horse all the time through the poem to kind of create the sense of, there is another presence there that is a reassuring presence, and then there's a further other presence that he senses. But it's like when you're listening really hard out for something, then you might hear other details that you wouldn't normally tune into, like the champing sound that the horse makes on the grass. So other words that are to do with silence that we can see through the poem, we've got silence, we've got just a kind of it's this kind of sense of absence. He's sort of feeling, especially when he calls the question out the second time, he's sort of expecting someone to come down and then they don't. But we also hear about the lone house and the quiet of the moonlight. And we hear a little bit about the loneliness of the traveller being emphasised. And we just hear again, no stirring. So there's quite a lot of that, and there's also this idea of echoing. Well, echoing can only really happen when something is really, really silent. And again, like the sound of iron on stone. So the horse's hoofs on the stone flags as he walks away kind of emphasise the silence that he's leaving behind him. The fourth question is, why is the phrase "the voice from the world of men" effective? Well, I think it really, really is really effective and important, because if we've got a voice from the world of men being mentioned, it kind of suggests to us that there are other worlds, that this world of men that we exist in is one world, but it's emphasising this idea that there are other worlds as well. And that's what the traveller is sensing the whole way through, that there is something going on in this spooky, eerie place, but he can't quite gain access to it despite his attempts. So I think that will probably help you with the 4 key questions. Obviously, you are looking to think about how he creates a frightening atmosphere. So you could think about some of the sort of the shadowy imagery and the sounds that go on throughout it, and some of the words which suggest some otherworldliness and his intuition. So words like cry and strangeness and the dark turf and the shadowy still house. So that ought to help you. I hope that's been useful, and I look forward to reading your responses.